Good evening, everyone. I am an addict. My name is Ron M., and I'm in Florida, USA. I'd like to welcome everyone. We have a very good turnout. We've been working with this for quite some time. And one of the things that we did is that we had to identify what we were trying to do, and we gave it a title. It's Black African American NA Pioneers. Now, this is not an NA meeting, so I want you to be aware of that. But we are going to present you some historical information, and we found a way to get this done. One of the things we did, we created a vision, and I want to read this to you. We have a flyer that's going to explain that to you. Our vision is to capture the NA history of the many African American pioneers who played pivotal roles in establishing and growing NA throughout the United States of America. Our mission is to share with the worldwide fellowship of NA the stories and contributions of the many African American pioneers through events, podcasts, archives, and other means. And this, by the way, is other means. And what we're attempting to do is present the untold, unknown, unspoken, missing stories of those members. And it's what we want to highlight today, and we have some plans for the future. We want to illuminate the fact that NA as a whole is much stronger as a result of what we're trying to do. You know, of course, someone might speak of their challenges, and I've had my challenges also since I've attempted to get recovery and find recovery in Narcotics Anonymous. But we want to focus on the positive end result. NA has grown as a result. It became more diverse. And with that diversity, we now exhibit more identification in the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. You know, we are the belief that diversity contributes to our unity. It doesn't detract from it. Diversity is a strength when we recognize it. We have to acknowledge it and celebrate it. You know, the analogy that I would like to use today is that I'm country and I'm old school. And before I became vegan, one of my favorite foods was pound cake. And you take a pound of milk and a pound of flour and a pound of this and a pound of that, and that diversifies the ingredients that makes the whole of the cake. But sometimes you think about just the thing that has a pound, but if you miss that little pinch of baking soda, the cake is not really a representation of what that pound cake is about. And we want to accentuate that strength of our diversity through this presentation. This is about history. We're trying to capture the history. We're recording this not for distribution, but we're recording this for historical purposes. You know, we're trying to preserve the things about who our members are here now in our diverse fellowship. And we also want to create some history for the people who aren't here yet. You know, for maybe even the public should learn a little bit more about our message. And this is what we talk about when we talk about history. You know, history means carrying the message. You know, history means preserving our message. History means educating and unifying our members through our message. History means educating the public, both our internal public and our external public. History means documenting the growth of NA, and that's what we're attempting to do today through service and some of the contributions from our members. And again, I want to take the time to thank all of you for coming, for participating. I am excited. We have various formats for our presentation today. And our first format is going to reflect on a person who found the only NA meeting in the world, and that was Bob B. And in NA's basic text on page 121, you'll see Bob's story. And it gives a lot of information, but today we have two members who are going to reminisce about Bob B, to give us a different perspective, on who Bob, some of the intangible things about Bob that we might have missed from that story. Just to give you some highlights, Tom Mack has 53 years clean, and Tom has been he's done service work with Bob, and Bob was also Tom's sponsor at one point. And we have Cathy B. Cathy asked Bob for sponsorship, is what I've been told, at the World Convention in Wichita, Kansas, and that was back in 1980. So she has a recovery aspect of who Bob was, some of the intangibles we might not know. Many years ago, I attended the World Service Conference out in Los Angeles, and we were bringing in, as our fellowship became older, we brought in a lot of our membership to capture their story. And look at me, I'm a senior citizen today. I was not a senior when I came into the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. I am not one of those pioneers that we're going to be talking about today, but we're attempting to capture this now because Bob is not with us anymore. And we have another person who we'll talk about later, who's a part of that process, that she's not here, but we have some members who are going to come here and tell us a little bit more about that. So now we're going to have Tom M. from Hawaii and Cathy B. from Florida, USA.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom, and I'm an addict.
Hello, Tom.
Share with you guys about this great man. I actually took down notes. I usually don't take down notes for anything, but there's so much about Bob to cover. I'll tell you how I met him. I got clean in Hawaii. In 1968, and by the way, I got 52 years. I don't have 53. I'll have 53 in December. But so thanks for the front, Ron. Appreciate it. But we don't do that here. So I got clean in Hawaii. There was no NA. I was clean 7 months, and the person who had helped me in Hawaii, this woman in AA, who had a house that she opened up for addicts. She gave me a copy of the little white book, and she told me that there was a fellowship called Narcotics Anonymous in Southern California. She said it was small, and they were struggling. So, my hope was I was going to get back to California, and I was going to go to NA. And so after 7 months, I moved back to California, and I found the NA meeting out in North Hollywood and Moore Park meeting, and I came in, and Bob was there, along with the Magdalenos, Pepe, Jimmy wasn't there, but there's a handful of the of the so-called pioneers, if you want to call them that. I knew that I had to get a sponsor, okay, and I thought I had to get a sponsor, somebody I was afraid of, because if you weren't afraid of it, it wasn't going to work. So I don't know where I got that information from, but so I went up to Bob. Here's Bob, this big black guy. He's got 8 years clean. He had a presence about him that was pretty strong presence, man. You knew Bob right away when you met him. He stood out. And so I went up to him and I said, hey, Bob, and he already knew that I came from Hawaii and stuff, because I've been coming to the meeting there. And he says, I said, Bob, I need to get a sponsor. So I was wondering if you'd be my sponsor. And in Bob's typical fashion, for you guys who all who knew him, you knew the way Bob responded to things was, yeah, okay, sounds good to me. And so I said, okay, thanks. I said, so look I got my fifth step ready. And he looks at me and goes, you got a what? I said, I got my fifth step ready. He goes, when the hell did you do that? I said, well, I've been clean, almost 8 months now. And he goes, I said, so, but I don't really have a car, and you live out, I forget where he was living. But anyways, I live in Venice, and he says, okay, I'll come out to your house. So he came out to where I lived, and and this is Bob. This is the way Bob was back then, and he was to the day he died. He came driving all the way out there to Venice, find my place. I walked in the room, and he walked in the room, and we sat down, and I handed him my notebook. And it was one of those inventories, where how we joke around. We say, if I tell you all this stuff, I don't have to kill you afterwards. It's the inventory with all the horrible stuff. The farm animals. I didn't have any farm animals, but anyways, you get what I'm saying. So I hand it to him, and he hands it back to me. He says, "No, you read it." And I went, "Oh fuck, man! I got to read all this stuff out loud." And so I started reading, man. And the whole time Bob sat there and he went, yeah, okay, okay. And about an hour and a half, man, I'm sweating bullets. And he ain't saying nothing but making those little comments here and there, little, yeah, okay. Then when I'm all finished, I said, okay, I'm done. And he goes, real good, Tom, real good. I'll see you at the meeting. And that was it, man. He walked out. And I said to myself, Jesus, man, am I that messed up, man? That he had nothing to say, no, like, yeah, I did that. I've heard worse than that, or anything like that. But, but I remember sitting there, and all we had back then was the AA books, and, so, I opened up that book and it said, admit yourself to God, another human being. It didn't say they had to say anything. And I said, well, I guess I did it. And so, in this was 1969. Okay, so there was 20 known Narcotics Anonymous meetings in the whole world. We were so small we didn't even know how small we were. It was I had no idea that there was such a small amount of meetings and members. Bob got me into service though. We were doing H&I back then, and and I don't know if some of but NA got its origins through H&I. Jimmy was approached by a guy who was the chairperson of Alcoholics Anonymous H&I committee, and they were taking the message into a jail in Southern California, and the warden asked them, "Hey, you guys, can't you do anything for the drug addicts?" And they said, "No, we're alcoholics, but we know these guys." And they mentioned Jimmy and a couple other guys that went to their meetings, and so the very first NA meeting, actually, in committee, actually was developed around that first H&I commitment that these guys did. So we did H&I back then, and didn't really have a committee, but Bob got me involved. He actually got me involved in an H&I commitment out in La Mirada, California, at a girls' home. There was all these young girls. And I'm only 21 years old, man. You can imagine my reaction. And but then I left. And Bob always showed up. He was always at all the meetings. And then I left and went back to Hawaii. And and back then we didn't make phone calls. Phone calls were expensive. Long distance phone calls. So we kind of lost touch with each other for a lot of years. And then I got, when I went back to Hawaii, I started NA back there with some other guys, and we got the fellowship going really well. And eventually, we came, to the World Service Conference. I was their first so-called RSR back then, and Bob was sort of my mentor. He was one that was going to help me get into service, with the conference. I didn't even know what a CAR was, which is the Conference Agenda Report. And Bob kind of had to walk me through that. And so we get into the conference, that first day, and the thing, the room is packed full of people all over the country, and I'm blown away. And then Bob says to me, "So you were here back in the in the early 70s, in 60s?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "In 69. I said, "Yeah, I had a sponsor, and I couldn't even remember Bob's name for some reason." I said, "Yeah, it was this black guy." I said, he goes, Bob yells out, Bob, you know this guy?" And Bob stands up, and holy shit, And he looks right, he goes, Tom, he goes, man, and he goes over and he gives me a big hug. And, and you guys who knew Bob, Bob remembered names, and the first thing, he hugs me, and he says, how's your brother Richie doing? And, because, my brother was bouncing in and out at the same time. And, that was the nature of Bob, it was just like, and I could tell at that time, everybody, really respected him. And the following year, they elected me to the board of trustees, and Bob was a member of on the board. He was actually Bob until he rolled off the board. He had been on the board for, what did I write down? I think for about 28 years, he was a member of the board of trustees. And we were discussing rotation and term limits and all that. And at the time, and and most of the trustees didn't want to give up their positions. They wanted to get reelected. And I remember talking to Bob about it, and Bob goes, "Yeah, I'm ready to go, man. I've done my thing here. People with more energy around than me." And so at that last World Service Conference that Bob was at, they asked him if he would like to say something to the conference as he was going to leave the conference as a trustee. And Bob's, typical man, and Bob said, yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. If it works out, I'll do that. Well, when it came time to bring Bob up to talk about his experience, the so-called the toot his horn, as some people would do, Bob wasn't there. And they asked me, you know where Bob went? I said, yeah, he had a sponsee in trouble, man. He said, this is more important to, go help my sponsee. So, that was Bob. That was the kind of humility Bob had. It wasn't about Bob. It wasn't like, hey, look at me, look at all I've done. He put first things first, and that was carry the message to the addict who is still suffering right here, right now. A little story about on the board. Bob really never really took positions too much on anything. I mean, I bet you a lot of you don't know this, but he had a nickname. His nickname was Shades of Gray. And what I mean by Shades of Gray, Bob would talk and talk and talk, but you never really was sure where in the hell he was when he was finished. And you kind of sit there after and say, what did he say? I mean, what is his position here? And they go, he didn't. He was like Shades of Gray. He just covered all areas of whatever the issue was. But we were tasked with revising the little white book. Okay. And that was a big deal back then. It was about 1965. I'm sorry, 1985. And the conference wanted the board to revise the book, bring it up to speed, to our language, our philosophy, and take out all the AA stuff, and and the alcoholic addict stuff, and just one disease, but Bob had a problem with it. There was a few people in there whose stories are in there that were dead, and we were talking about editing their stories, taking out words and stuff. And Bob said, you can't do that, man. You can't do that. And they were we were kind of pushing ahead with it, and at one point Bob said, hey man, I promised these people, man, that I would not revise their stories, if, especially these guys that are dead. And it came to a real impasse with the board and Bob. And finally, they pretty much told Bob, we're going to move ahead with it anyways, Bob. And Bob pulled the card that I know now you guys don't know about this. He pulled the card that nobody knew he had. He says, you guys don't realize who really owns the copyright to the NA logo. And I remember our manager at the time, it was Bob Stone, and Bob Stone looks at him and goes, what? He goes, yeah, WSO doesn't own the copyright to our logo. I do. Jimmy K gave it to me, because as some of you know, Bob had jewelry. He created jewelry and he sold jewelry. well, he had to copyright the logo, when he was doing that. And that was before anybody even knew how important these things really were. And and I and I remember Bob Stone and Bob Raymar, and they all went, oh man, and they all like okay, we got to take a break here. Bob, come on back here, and they went in a room and they hammered out, and finally Bob came out, and they made a consensus. They would remove the stories. They wouldn't edit them, and Bob made that consensus, which was not easy for him, because that little white book was, it was the sacred cow at that time. But that's what Bob was like. He, when he had to stand firm on something, man, he was going to fight. Let me see if I'm missing anything. I don't want to be talking too long either, because I know Cathy has got a lot to say too. Let me see. Yeah, did I already say this? I don't know. Shit, I don't know if I already said this, but when yeah, I did. I already said when Bob left the conference, he didn't. But I know when we had the 50th anniversary of Narcotics Anonymous, I was on the roll board at that time, and we're trying to choose the main speaker for Saturday night, and of course we all thought about Bob, but we were worried that Bob, because by then Bob was starting to lose it. He couldn't track very well, and some of the other places he had spoken at, he kind of went all over the place, and we were wondering if that would be fear to him, and there'd be fear to the convention, But when it got down to it, it was like, but who else? Who else would you want, to be the main speaker at the 50th anniversary? And so we had Bob, and for all of you who were there, fucking, he knocked it out of the ballpark. I mean, absolutely knocked it out of the ballpark. And he and I stayed close. He came to Hawaii and spent some time with me and my kids and everything. My kids loved him. They dressed him up in grass hula skirts and stuff, and of course Bob went along with it, Bob had fun, man. Bob had fun. He knew how to have fun in recovery, man. And he wasn't all business. He wasn't all service. He wasn't all. He knew how to have fun. And but most of all, man, he was dedicated to the newcomer, man, and to his sponsees. So I miss him. I'm sure all you guys do too. He was a great man. Is a great man. But thanks so much for asking me. And I was surprised when I was asked, because there's lots of other you guys here that know a lot more about Bob than me, because you spent a lot more day-to-day time with him and stuff throughout the years. But he so I'm very honored, and so turn it over to you guys. Cathy, love you, and good luck, man. Ciao.
Thank you, Tom. Love you. Talk to you soon. And now we're going to unmute Cathy B. And Cathy, please come in and introduce yourself and give us a little bit more about Bob B. Cathy.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, Tom. My name's Cathy. I'm an addict. And thanks for asking me. I think I felt like you, Tom, that there's so many people that Bob had in his life. I'm feeling very, very good about being asked to talk about Bob. My clean date's July 15th, 1975. And when I got clean in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, my husband and I got clean. I was married to my addiction. We got clean on the same day and stayed clean. Dick passed in 2020. So we were married 50 years, and 46 of them were in recovery. We had, in 1975, we had the White Book, like Tom said, and not a lot of literature. but what we had were phone numbers of people in California. California was like, it was the mysterious place on the other side of the country that had all the information and all the knowledge about NA. We were kind of bumbling around. I was 23 years old, thought I knew something when I got here. The first time I had an occasion to talk to Bob, because like Tom said, just to give you some perspective, minimum wage was $1.85 an hour back then. So for us to make a phone call to California, we had to pull our resources together. And so we collected up some money from my home group, which was Hannah, Harrisburg area, NA. And I got to call Bob in 1977. And the reason I called Bob, I was clean 2 years. I was 25 years old. There was a group that formed in Harrisburg, and it was called Brothers and Sisters. Now, these were people that were in my home group. We were all went to meetings every day together, and they broke off and not broke off from NA, but they wanted to start their own meeting, all Black meeting, McClay Street in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I called Bob to rant about how this group was breaking the traditions. They were forming a separate group. There was no unity here. What's going on? NA is going to be over, you know. And I was the first time I'd ever talked to him. I was a little intimidated, but I wanted to sound like I was passionate about this. And he said, well, just go to the meeting. He said, why don't you just go to the meeting? You and Dick, just, you know what time it is. You know what day it is. Just go to the meeting. Didn't have an opinion about it. I tried to get him to tell me that I should go in there and tell them we can't do this. So I didn't know Bob was Black. The Brothers and Sisters group continued. I went to that meeting. In a matter of months, it was just a meeting like every other meeting. I didn't really understand a lot about diversity. I got clean in Harrisburg. I went to a meeting in Philadelphia at Eagleville Hospital in 1976 and Williamsport. I would say the fellowship was, for me in that small area, was very diverse. The person with the most time in our area, which we didn't have an area yet, area hadn't formed, was Eddie C. And he was a Black guy, older guy, felt a calling to come down to Harrisburg. He was from the Williamsport area and to help us out. I think that it was really, we didn't have a lot of information, but we knew that there was something about NA that we had to keep alive where we were and not throw each other out of the program because we knew somehow it was bigger than us because there was California. And I had an opportunity. I was clean 5 years. I've had people ask me, how did you guys work the steps? You didn't have a book. What we were doing was trying to serve in NA. My sponsor had 6 months clean longer than me. And we were just trying to grow NA, start meetings. It took us 2 years to figure out that we didn't have to travel 300 or 400 miles a week if we started more meetings in our area. We were just going to meetings and they were already there. So we went there. We heard there was a meeting in Queens, New York. We just get in the car and go there. And somebody from the AA program said, well, why don't you guys just start more meetings? And we didn't have 7 meetings a week for about 18 months. By the time 18 months was here, we had 7 meetings a week in Harrisburg. We got some encouragement from Jimmy and Bob and Chuck. Actually made the trip out to Pennsylvania and stayed with us on our farm for a couple of weeks. And we had some people that we could ask questions too. And the people I got clean in a home group where it was all men. There weren't any women in NA for in and out, for about 18, 20 months. And so I got clean with these guys. And the one who had 6 months more time was the old timer, of our group. And, we didn't have any conflict or controversy. We couldn't afford to lose anybody in NA back then. And so we didn't want to chase each other out of the program. So we were very open to anybody who wanted to come to meetings, and we welcomed them. And we almost, infiltrated their life so much because we wanted to make sure they came back that we all went to the same meetings every night. We traveled everywhere together. We had an area that was formed in Harrisburg, Williamsport area, actually. And people were calling from California, giving us some insight, telling us what might work for us. And I never dreamed that I would get to California someday. My life was small, but I was clean. And in 1980, the one person who had a vehicle in our area, pulled up in front of our house and said, how much money do you have? There's a convention, a world convention of NA in Wichita, Kansas. We had a little bit of money, not much money. We had to drive around, find a couple people that had more money so we could afford to take the trip to Wichita, Kansas. That's where I met Bob face to face. And I was clean 5 years. I didn't know anything about Wichita, Kansas. I felt like I was on another planet when I got there. And I always talked about going places, and I never went anywhere in my addiction. And I would just talk about going to Florida, going to California. At 5 years, I thought, my husband and I both, we thought that we were, prolific. We thought that people knew who we were. And then I got to Wichita, there was 350 people there. It's the biggest group of NA people I had ever seen or even imagined. I met Bob. He was leaning up against the wall watching us. And because I couldn't wait to get to the marathon meeting to tell him I was clean 5 years and that I might be able to help them too. And Bob, after the marathon meeting, he was in and heard us, took us aside, and he said, he introduced himself. I had talked to him on the phone, and he said, we're trying to have a single language that we can all use and understand, because Dick and I were still drug addicts and alcoholics. And we made everybody that we sponsored say they were alcoholics, because when we got clean, they told us we were alcoholics. And when we came back, and it was just something people would say to us, why do I have to say I'm an alcoholic? I'm an addict. We'd say, because that's just the way it is. We came back from Wichita, Kansas, after we met Bob. He spent the entire weekend talking to us about unity, having the right motives, being responsible to carry a message. And we went back to our area in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, went to the biggest meeting that we had in the area, made sure we got a reading, and identified ourselves as addicts. Everybody was dead silent. They were like, oh my God, we can be addicts now? If Dick and Cathy said we can be addicts. And so we explained to them with as much humility as we could that NA is big. It's in a lot more places than we thought. Not only is it in Wichita, it's in Louisiana, it's in Alabama. There were pockets of meetings, and Bob said, you guys go back to Harrisburg. You got a lot of work to do. We're writing a book. And most everything had been compiled by then. And there were people behind the scenes working very hard to write literature and present our own book. This is a dream of those guys: Jimmy, Bob, George, everybody that had come to NA before me, they had a vision, I remember hearing Jimmy talk in New York City, and he said he believed that him and Bob, they were, co-founders, they were around in the very early days, that they were keeping NA alive for the people who hadn't been born yet. That was me. I got clean in 75 and I was 23 years old. And when I needed NA, there was 300 meetings in the world, and one of them was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I walked into NA and never looked back. I stayed clean. And what helped me the most was not just Bob. It was a lot of those guys who kind of, I just followed along with what they did. I was always kind of a worker, not a frontline person. And I was a lot quieter than my husband. And I was excited. I was so enthusiastic about Narcotics Anonymous that I had a calling that said to me, this is going to be a way of life. This is going to be something you do. This is how you're going to live. And so I had hope. I had Bob in my life for a long time before I asked him to be my sponsor. We talked a lot. He was always very kind. I knew him before the, shades of gray time. And I knew him during that time too. I was thinking of some of the things he taught me. And in the beginning, he taught me how to be a friend. He was a friend and then he became a sponsor. Sometimes the two things get, mixed up. But when I asked him if he would be my sponsor, he asked me why. And I said, because I just want more. I'm not going to go anywhere. I want more. I'm on my ass here. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have direction. And he taught me how to put all my energy, all my hope, all my desire to stay clean and be part of something that was bigger. He taught me how to run into NA. And I ripped and ran for a long time in NA. Had multiple commitments. There wasn't anything that I was asked to do that there were things I didn't want to do. But if I talked to Bob, he'd say, well, they asked you because they need you to do it. And I would do it. And I wasn't an overachiever or anything. I kind of looked for the easy way out most of my life up until that time. And this was no place for the weak-hearted. I would get a phone call and they'd say, you have to go to Philadelphia. You have to go to Little Rock, Arkansas. Why would anybody go to Little Rock, Arkansas? Because there's a literature conference there. We went to the Nashville, the volunteer convention where we worked on studying stories and working on an editing of the basic text. And I was sitting in a editing committee room with a group of people. And there was a guy there who's a good bit older than us. We were pretty young. And he started telling the stories about when he grew up and how he came to NA and all that. And he said, I don't know how to read and write. And I was like, what are you doing in an editing committee, buddy? And I was like, we're here to work. This is serious. That guy learned how to read and write, editing the basic text in 1982. I'll never forget that. He's passed on now. His name was Donnie. And what he did was he memorized our readings. He couldn't read them, but he memorized them. So I don't even have them memorized. And I better hurry up and do it because I can hardly memorize anything anymore. But I thought that was a gift to me, to be with somebody who couldn't read and write, was sitting at a literature subcommittee meeting. And I learned how to, I never knew who I was going to get my hope from that day. And I wasn't looking for the differences. And I know that there were color differences. There were um, economic differences, social differences between all of us. But NA was the only place I could ever think where I would be sitting in a meeting next to a total stranger who had just got out of prison for armed robbery. And I just give them a big hug and say, welcome. I didn't even know their name yet. And I used to find it odd that other addicts were going to, in the company of addicts, I was going to learn how to be a human being. And Bob brought me along. He brought me along through all my questioning, and I didn't have doubt, but I wondered a lot about what is all this for? And then we saw NA grow. You know, we saw it. It's 46 years is a long time to try to, you know, capture and tell you what it's been like. I know that Bob welcomed us into his home. We were coming out for the conference for the basic text. Dick was the regional rep, and I tagged along and emptied trash and made coffee. And Bob brought us to California, which was, here I was in California. And a few years ago, I had to look on a map to see where it was. And I had, he let us live in his mobile home. That's where we stayed, right out on his property, lived in Watts. And we stayed there, and he would take us back and forth to the conference. And we even rented a car at the time. And, but back then, to tell you the truth, it cost money to be in NA. There wasn't a service line. So you didn't have somebody buy you a ticket. You had to pay your own way. And it was a little tougher then, you know, financially for us. It wasn't just the long distance calls. It was gas in your car. So you could go to here Carmelita in Washington, D.C. You'd have to take 6 people with you to put enough gas in the car to get down there and back. Those were all things that I embraced. I thought that made us warriors in some way. We were the soldiers, you know, for NA. And we acted like that too. And I think that the people who, of course, came before me, I have always had deep respect and gratitude for those people. Always took the time. I really thought that the people I got clean with, my peer group, a couple people have passed away, but we still stay in contact with each other. The history we had with Bob ran throughout my whole recovery from 1977 until he passed away. When I went to Bob's service, his funeral in California, and I was telling a friend today, I was driving up Forest Lawn Cemetery, and I thought, wow, Bob's like married where the celebrities, I mean, he's being buried where the celebrities go. And I went into this chapel that was full of people, people that welcomed me, had heard my name. I heard their names I'd never met, that Bob had sponsored for decades. And I saw what an influence he had. And I always knew that he was guiding me. And I would think things like, what would Bob do? And I thought, it's not possible for me to do what the people did before me. But he told me all along the way that what you're doing right now will become history in NA. He used to say, write this stuff down. It's important. Make sure that you tell the stories before you get too old and you start making shit up. And so it sounded better than it really was. It was tough. These guys were pioneers in a true sense in NA. They made something possible for us before we were even born. So when we were ready for it, here it is. It's here. I talk about our predecessors. I talk about the people that came before me all the time. I never shut up about it. I have books that have been signed. I have articles. I have old NA ways when they first came out. I remember the NA World Directory we had. where somehow we thought we could put a directory together every meeting in the United States. Well, they changed like every minute, and there were meetings added, meetings taken off. We'd get there and there was no meeting there. There hadn't been a meeting there in 6 months, but that book became like very important to us, and it connected us. Even if we didn't go to, Boise, Idaho, there was a meeting there in this book. My connection has been so deep to Narcotics Anonymous. I've never had a time in my life when this wasn't the most important thing in my life. And these guys, Bob, Jimmy, Chuck, all those guys that came before us. I was at a world convention in California, San Diego, and I was speaking at an old timers meeting with Gordon. These guys were like my, heroes. And somebody came walking up to me, and it was George M. And they said, "Here, hold on to this guy. He wanders off." And I said, "Well, who is he?" And they introduced me, and he was one of the speakers. And he too, they were afraid he was going to wander off and get lost. And that guy spoke in a beautiful way about his life and his life in recovery. Never missed one beat. And I thought, geez, if I have to hold on to this guy I'm watching, how's he going to get up there on the stage and talk? It was just like it was who he was, and he told his story. And I felt so honored always to be around people that were so sincere and committed to Narcotics Anonymous. So the things that I've learned over the years, Bob loved me, loved my husband, Dick. They were very close. And what I was thinking, and most recently was that my husband passed away. He had cancer. He was trying to hold on to his 46th anniversary. Things he got worse. He wasn't going to make it he died 3 weeks before his anniversary. And Bob had taught me from when he was ill, he was in the hospital. I was talking to him. I was staying in contact with him. He said, "What we do for ourselves dies with us. What we do for others lives on when we're gone." And I turned my husband over to Bob. I got it. And I made some kind of peace with losing somebody who was in my life for 50 years, because I was handing him off to somebody who walked us through the program and knew us from when we were brand new little, asshole kids in NA. And we were all grown up, we were old. And I knew that he was going to be with somebody who would help him on the next part of his journey. And it's the only peace I could find, because it was a very difficult thing to do. Okay, well, I know we got a lot of speakers saying a lot of things. I'm glad my audio and video worked okay. And I was so grateful to see you guys and to be part of this every day of my life. I can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, this is priceless. We can't clap, but just this is the way you clap virtually. So let's give Tom and Cathy a hand. Look at this. Look at this. I feel the potency. We have to capture our history. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Cathy. Thank you for giving those intangible. We can capture the history of the essence of the things about these people in our history and this is the purpose of why we're doing this. Thank you so much. And thank you, audience, for your consistent participation.